Willkommen auf Broadleaf Junkie. Ich mach's kurz und knackig. Kommt mit auf eine Reise, lernt die Leute hinter den Zigarren, die ihr und ich gerne rauchen, kennen. Viel Spaß. Er war Bassist in einer Rockband, bezeichnet sich als Habanophil und sammelt Weine. Seine Zigarrenlinien drehen sich um alte Horrorfilme und verschiedene Fleischcuts und hin und wieder um die Rekreation alter kubanischer Geschmacksprofile. Ich habe mit Pete Johnson über Gott und die Welt gequatscht. I just wanted to stop by, ask a couple questions, let you tell me and us something about your brand and why you're here again. I mean,
same answer every year, pretty much.
Yeah, I know. But this year there was also the premiere of the hand-rolled.
The Julio Aroa, yeah. Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're already rolling.
We actually premiered that episode in New Orleans at the PCA show. But
All right.
But the governor of the state of Louisiana wanted to speak in front of the crowd because they made a special exemption for us to smoke.
Okay.
And he wanted to welcome everybody to the show. So they had to cut it a little short so he could speak.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this is the first time I actually saw the final cut. I actually really enjoyed it. Very happy. The Julio Aroa story is a good history lesson about when cigar makers left Cuba and started growing tobacco outside of Cuba.
I really found interesting that he said that he does not want to go back.
Oh, yeah.
And I was there last year, and you can really see this place falling apart.
Yeah, it's sad.
It's sad, very sad.
It's sad because if you think about it, even when, if you think about when Batista was around, it was corrupt.
Yeah.
But it was a booming city. The Havana the country was booming. The city was booming. So you see old history pieces about that. You wonder what would have happened if Castro never came, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that now. The last time I was in Cuba was in 2007, and it was depressing then.
Yeah. So. And it's also is a little bit of your history, but I think if I read correctly that you smoked cigars in Cuba and by this thought, well, let's do something like this.
Well, I grew up not playing, I was playing music, so yeah. I wasn't in cigars. I didn't have any relation to cigars. In 1991, I started smoking cigars on stage, smoking cigars just as a hobby. And in 1993, I needed a job. I had a kind of a dead-end job. My band had broken up. We weren't playing anymore. But I really liked cigars, and I was really interested in the history and the culture. And someone asked me if I wanted to work in a cigar store. So I took a job on a Sunday, every Sunday. Within 6 months, that Sunday turned into every day. And then there's a joke in the United States. I don't know if it translates for you, but what does a bus driver do when he's on holiday? He rides the bus.
All right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like in the tobacco business or the cigar business, we continue to ride the bus. So we don't take a holiday. We're always working, or we're always smoking cigars and enjoying what we do. So in 93, when I got the job offer, early 93, when I got the job offer, I went down this huge rabbit hole of wanting to learn everything about cigars. And I was fascinated with Cuban cigars, of course. So I had a big collection of Cuban cigars. I knew every vitola of Cuban cigars. I knew every flavor profile of Cuban cigars. I met some people that became my mentors in the business. some taught me how to do blind taste tests. My blind taste test wasn't to find flavor profiles. My blind taste test was to figure out what the cigar was.
All right.
Not like, oh, tell me what you taste. It was never that. It wasn't like sniffing a glass of wine and going, oh, I smell currant, you know. It was more, this is this cigar.
Okay.
Yeah, give me the cigar blind and I would tell you what the cigar was. Because I was such a fanatic of Cuban cigars, I knew the whole Cuban portfolio. So it was easy for me to look at a cigar from Cuba and go, oh, that's this. And that was taught to me by a friend of mine named George Brightman, who's actually in the Julio Oroa documentary. He's also in the documentary that's going to be out a little bit about my story. It's called, the episode from my story is called Tatuaje, but it has a lot of history about George, my friend, and a lot of history about the Garcias.
Yeah.
So it's just not mine. It's actually more of a boom story because I grew up in the cigar boom.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's more or less the gist of the story of where I came up was during the boom, and understanding what I liked about cigars. So eventually, when it came time to make my own thing, I really wanted to make a Cuban cigar because I was in love with Cuban culture. I was in love with Cuban cigars. Not so much anymore. I would say my love for Cuban cigars started to disappear in the 96, 97, 98 years where I saw the quality going down because what I was smoking during those years was cigars from the late 80s and the early 90s.
Okay.
So by the time I got to to the late 90s and the early 2000s, I started noticing that there was a big change that I didn't like. So I shifted my opinion on what I thought was a great cigar. So when I did my own brand in 2003, I really wanted to make what I thought was better than a Cuban cigar.
All right.
Yeah.
So now you're also executive producer on this hand roll thing?
All the hand rolled films. I funded the first one, the majority of it. We had help. Other companies chipped in.
And they are also pretty much about history.
A lot of history.
Cigars.
Yeah.
A lot of history.
My episode's not so much about history. It's just a history of me.
Yeah,
where
as
I
you
grew
said,
up.
also the cigar boom.
Yeah, which is a big part of
Yeah, so that kind of brings me to a question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Also, when I look at the brown label or the bands on your cigars, it has this old school feel to it. So what does history mean to you when it comes to cigars or presenting a cigar?
Yeah, well, originally I didn't want to put a band on the cigar.
All right.
I knew what I was going to call the cigar. Well, eventually I figured out what I was going to call the cigar. It wasn't my first choice for the name, by the way. I came up with that later because I was trying to figure out what was personal to me. And everybody called me Tattoo Pete. So I learned how to say the word tattoo in Spanish was tatuaje. I had a busboy that worked at the club I was managing for cigars. I had him write it down, and it's because I couldn't pronounce it and I didn't know how to spell it. But that was personal to me, and I figured I needed a Spanish name because, who's going to call their cigar tattoo? And Tatuaje was kind of mysterious because people didn't know what it meant. But the band came later because I didn't want to put a band on it. But someone told me you need to have a band on the cigar to have name recognition. You need to have a band on the cigar so people don't sell some other cigar as your cigar.
All right. Yeah.
Because people sometimes back in the old days of retail, they would take cigars from another box and put them in another box and say, "Oh, that's the same cigar."
I remember that.
Even if you go back to the history of Camacho, they had a cigar called the Diploma.
Yeah.
They still have it, I think. Now that they've been sold,
It's something different now, but yeah.
But back then, the original cigars had no bands.
Okay.
But the problem is that people were like potentially refilling the box with some other cigar, and they didn't want to take that risk of having someone's bad cigar mimic what they thought was a great cigar. And I thought the Camacho Diploma was one of the best cigars on the market.
I love those.
Yeah. Well, if you had to go back to 2001, the best cigar I had smoked in a long time outside of Cuba, because again I was still a Cuban fan. But I didn't want to put a band on it. Someone told me I had to do it. And the history of old Cuban cigars, they always had a brown band, a very simple brown band. There was nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. It let the cigar speak for itself. The band was not speaking for the cigar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was just a name on it.
Yeah. There's simplicity to it. And I love the history, and I love the simplicity. So that's why I never changed. I mean, I have a couple brands that I do now that have fancier bands, but I still like the simple ones.
But they, I think, are still simple when I think of Fausto or what was the other thing? This Halloween thing with the pumpkin on it. It's simple.
Yeah, it's simple. A little bit more embellished, but yeah, simple.
Yeah.
If you go back to old Cuba, and I was been fortunate enough to be able to look at a lot of old books, and I have a lot of old books on Cuba and Cuban cigars and Cuban factories. But if you are able to see some of the old bands that they're making in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you see that the bands shifted with the times. When they couldn't use the gold dusting and the gold foil because of things that they needed for other things, so that they started printing just very simple embossed colored bands. They were embossed, so they had the embellishment, but they didn't have the gold laminate or the gold foil or the gold dusting. And you saw the shift change as usually during war times that they shifted.
Okay.
But the simple brown band always stayed consistent. But sometimes people looked at the simple brown band and thought it was cheap.
Yeah,
but if you look at H. Upmann, Monte Cristo, Punch, way back in Cuba, there was a brand called Fleur de Lis back in Cuba that was on the shelf at the same time as Monte Cristo. The same simple brown band.
Okay.
Nothing fancy.
But go basically always with the same design but different colors.
Yeah.
It's quite obvious with the Monster series.
Yeah.
But also has this coffin-shaped boxes.
Yeah.
So this is not about history or simple bands anymore. This is something completely different, and I wonder if this storytelling in this case is important for you to do those kind of lines.
It's a friend of mine. I think I've told you this story, but a friend of mine was trying to convince me to do a series of cigars. He didn't know what, but he thought I should do like an annual thing. And he had a Nike sneaker that had Frankenstein on it.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I saw the sneaker, I said, monsters. And I knew exactly how I wanted it to be portrayed. The box had to be a coffin, a casket.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to take away from what I did with the simplicity of the brand. But that was kind of like the shock value. People thought I was crazy. Like what's Pete doing now? Because everything else was very simple. Brown band, red band, black band, yellow band. Nothing too fancy. Sometimes not good for people that are colorblind, though, because they can't see the difference of the colors.
Okay. Yeah.
I've had people actually ask me, can you put the names on the bands? Because I can't see what the color is, so I don't know. You give me a chart, and it has the names of the colors, but I can't see the colors, so I don't know which one's which. So the the Monster series was a product of that conversation with my buddy with that pair of sneakers, and it was easy to come up with the ideas because I liked old monster movies, and I thought it was a lot of fun to kind of have that like untraditional, because I was untraditional anyways.
Yeah.
Even though I was respecting tradition with the cigars and the original labels, people look at me and go, "You're not a traditional cigar maker. So why not do something with a little shock?" It turned out to be a big thing. Like I didn't expect it to catch the way it did.
Yeah, I think I like the combination of this old school style on the one hand and the kind of modern or unusual package.
Yeah.
Like the pork tenderloin or stuff that comes in basically like a steak.
Butcher paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually the same guy that convinced me to do gave me the idea about with the sneaker. I was making a cigar for them, and they wanted me to do a series called the Meat Locker, and they wanted me to do a filet mignon, a ribeye, a New York strip, and have the cigars be modeled after meat cuts.
Okay, so
flavor profiles.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. I was like, I'm not sure about it. I knew what I would do for packaging on it back then, but I said I have a cigar that we can do, but let's just call it the butcher's cut because it will not make the meat locker. It's going to be just what the butcher had cut that day. And that's where pork tenderloin was spawned. The actual label that was on the bundle originally was actually a concept that the owner of the store came up with. I said put it in butcher paper. And as soon as he heard that, he made this label up, and I go, that made it.
Okay.
Yeah, that finished the packaging perfectly.
But that's about the packaging. Was there ideas about the blends from the start? Was this the first thing to go with? But
yeah, I mean, when you start putting the words like filet mignon, you're like, okay, you got to think of for me, it went straight to sizes. Like if I said to
Makes
you,
sense.
if you're going to make a cigar and it's a filet mignon, what size would you consider doing?
For a filet mignon, I maybe would go with a Corona Gorda.
Good choice. We were actually talking about a Lancero.
Okay.
Because
well, it makes sense. Yeah.
Skinny ring gauge, and you're straight to the point.
Yeah.
But we were kind of like throwing shit at the wall, like spitballing. But that was like one of the concepts is doing a skinnier ring gauge. So Corona Gorda would be a great size, but maybe for like a New York strip, maybe you do something like a Corona Gorda. Maybe for a ribeye, you go with a little fatter ring gauge because of the fat on the ribeye.
Yeah.
But we never finished the concept.
Yeah. Okay.
So we never did it, and because pork tenderloin kind of took the spotlight away, like that was now the thing. And then I started doing other projects for stores, limited releases for retail stores that were just directed towards the retailer and not towards a theme or a concept.
But how's the reception of that?
With pork tenderloin?
Yeah, or like Monster series of pork tenderloin. So
the pork tenderloin was a shock. I think people were kind of expecting something weird from me because the Monster series was already out. But the Monster series is really where it led it all, because I was super traditional early on. Everything was very standard shapes, very standard vitolas, very simple packaging. I wanted to create a portfolio of just good cigars. The Monster series was a way for me to play, to do something off the wall and different. So when I did it, the first year it sold out, but we sold it to 13 retailers. Like that's it. 13 retailers got, X amount of boxes, and they sold them out very quickly. But by the time the second year came out, that's when everybody started to want them.
Yeah.
So it took till the second year for everybody to go, how did I miss the first one? So let's get this one. So it became a thing every year where everybody was like looking forward to getting it, and whether or not they would get it because of limited production. So by the time I came out with pork tenderloin, people were expecting something off the wall, but they kind of got a chuckle that it kind of fit in with the theme of the funky things that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out to be, I think it turned out to be something that actually sparked a lot of people's creativity with packaging and just not doing traditional box, doing something kind of silly and off the wall. Not that that I inspired a lot, but I think a lot of people kind of started looking differently at how to package things. I mean, one of the greatest people that were packing cigars back then was Gurkha. Gurkha was packing cigars very unique. So that was another way for people to look at packaging differently. Because everything was very simple and standard. But I wanted to keep the simple and standard. I haven't changed my packaging since the first production. It's still the same.
So, but this playing around with ideas is still something, or making something silly is still something that drives you to make new stuff, or
it's
is
a
it just the
drive for creativity. Because, being a musician, you're always singing about what could be the next song. What could be the next lyric that you put in a song? Do you want to change styles? Maybe you want to be a little bit more pop rock, and the next time you go around, maybe you want to be a little bit more grunge or a little bit more heavy metal. Or maybe you want to throw some jazz into something and really trip people out. So the creativity from music, I think, is what gave me the inspiration to continue to create different things and do something different, and not just the uber traditional stuff. When I was doing the uber traditional stuff, when I first started, it was really just paying respect to the traditions of the industry and not trying to go for the shock value. The shock value was already there with the name, and people would see the tattoos.
Okay. Yeah.
So it took a long time for people to go, what is that?
So creativity is some kind of a driving force for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, more than being traditional, being creative.
It's just being able to change your tune or change the way you play something is a form of creativity, and it's honestly it's part of the inspiration of why I like to create different things and new cigars, because I'm always going to have that art vibe in my body. When I was a kid, I used to draw a lot, paint a little bit, not anymore. When I got older, I wanted to be a fashion designer.
Okay.
So I started making clothes. I've always been creative. My grandmother taught me how to use a sewing machine, so I was always like, okay. But it eventually all stemmed from music too, because music inspired me. And then eventually, when I started playing music on stage, I would do whatever I could to make my clothes my personal vibe,
Yeah.
Like I always do something to my jeans to mess them up, or I would sew a patch into something, or I'd make a jacket. I would take two jackets and make a Frankenstein jacket out of them.
Okay.
I was always into just creativity.
Sounds pretty much punk rock.
Yeah. Like by that time, I had lost my art. Like I stopped doing drawing or any type of painting because music took over my life completely, and I just practiced music, listened to a lot of music, and eventually did the whole rock and roll thing in Los Angeles and loved it. Still miss it, Still love the history of it.
I'd assume music is still a big part for you in your life.
Yeah, I don't play it as much, but I have my guitars on the wall, and I still pick them up, and I play by myself in a room without anybody listening to me. When I was a kid, I wanted to be on stage in front of thousands of people, and now I I like the quiet life.
All right. But would you say that the shift over the last few decades in the cigar world or cigar community gave you a much bigger playground to play with? Yeah,
absolutely. I think if you look at the creativity of like Drew Estates, when they came out on the scene, or this guy Lars Teton, who was very creative, very eccentric. And you had like a brand like mine, which had the traditional, but also had the untraditional. I think it inspired a lot of people to kind of like think more outside the box and think of different ways to create new cigars and different packaging, more artistic boxes and more embellishment. There's some companies that do very well traditional, and that's their style. But then there's a lot of companies now that are doing very unique, funky, different packaging.
Yeah, or having or telling a backstory for it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like Nick, he's always telling some kind of a story and the backstory.
Talking about Nick Melillo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I think yours, the different lines, they always speak for themselves. It's the Monster series, that's clear. It's Foster, that's clear.
If you look at Nick and I are both cigar nerds. Like we're like huge cigar nerds. We're tobacco nerds. Nick's more of a tobacco guy. But we both were in love with Connecticut broadleaf when we were kids. So, and he lives in Connecticut. He has his office in Connecticut. I think just the surroundings inspire you, and you geek out on certain things. And I also like to experiment with cigars. When I was younger, I would age them in different ways to see how the aging process would affect cigars. It was always fun to just play with cigars. Sometimes cigars are taken too serious. And when I was younger, I was super serious about checking every cigar and looking at everything, because it was my collection. Because my parents used to do antiques when I was younger, so this was my now form of antiques. And when I got into wine, that was now another form of antique for me, because now I'm collecting wine. Because I was also a baseball card collector when I was a kid. That was a big thing for me. People don't know about baseball cards anymore, but it was a thing. I think just being around a lot of old vintage stuff when I was a kid turned my love into tradition, and loving the vintage and old things. So those little pieces that my parents gave me inspired a lot of the way I look at how I want something packaged.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, are you working on something you're excited about and playing with?
Yeah, I'm always working on something. I actually have a license with the estate of Boris Karloff.
Okay.
The guy who played Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And I have a new Boris Karloff coming out in November. I'm excited about that, but that's very simple packaging, but homage to him with his picture on the box. I'm always excited about that. I have some things coming next year I can't talk about yet. I have to have some surprises.
Yeah, of course.
But that's coming out in November, but we have the Mummy Redux that's coming out in a couple weeks in the United States. And there's a few more things, but I can't go into details.
Okay, then...
a lot of them will stay within the theme of what we've done before, though.
All right, then let's...
We like to bring a lot of things back from the dead.
That makes sense regarding the Monster series, I think. But then let's wrap this up with this little bit of suspense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Die nächste Erhöhung der Tabaksteuer kommt. Aber noch können wir über den unten aufgezeigten Link uns an die EU-Kommission wenden und dem gegenüber argumentieren, dass Zigarren als Genussmittel anders zu betrachten sind als Zigaretten und sie dementsprechend von dieser Steuererhöhung ausgenommen werden. Guckt es euch an, kommentiert, gemeinsam können wir es schaffen, dass uns dieses Genussmittel in den aktuellen Preiskategorien und in der aktuellen Besteuerung erhalten bleiben. Danke euch. Wenn es euch gefallen hat, guckt euch die anderen Videos an, liked, teilt, kommentiert, folgt mir, wenn ihr wollt und genießt eine gute Zigarre.